You're strong. You matter. You have something to contribute, and so does everyone around you. And together, we can do anything. Let that be your story and our story going into 2022. Hi everyone, I'm Nathan Gardner, and this is We Can Remake the World, a podcast about the people who are changing the world and how you can help. I hope you all had a fantastic and restful, peaceful holiday and New Year's celebration, if you celebrated either over the last few weeks. I personally did a lot of nothing, which was exactly what I needed. Normally, I'd be pretty social and have people over a lot as much as possible, cook a bunch and bake a lot, but this year it was more about quality time with a small group of people, a lot of sleep, reading, painting, family time with my partner and our dog. I'd forgotten how good it feels to have nothing on the agenda for an entire afternoon except a cup of tea and a book, which is kind of my happy place, or one of them. So it was such a gift. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm getting jealous of my past self, so I should probably move on. But I hope you all got to unplug in a healthy way and just forget about everything out there in the world for a little while. We don't want to be ignorant. We don't want to bury our heads in the sand, of course, but I think a little period of time to just check out over the holidays is warranted for all of us. So I hope you got to enjoy that a bit. And now it's time to jump back in, because jump in we must. This world isn't going to change itself. It's not going to get better without us and our input. No matter what's happening with the pandemic, we've got hearts to reach, minds to change, leaders to reach out to and communicate with, industries to rethink and transform, ecosystems to restore, ideas to share, and hope to spread. Exciting, energizing stuff. For those of us who want to change the world and be part of building a new world, a better world, I think we've got to see it as an opportunity rather than a colossal challenge or task. And why not? Changing the world ought to be a visionary and exhilarating exercise for us, right? I mean, for those of us who have this vision, who feel this pull toward making things better, shouldn't we try to enjoy it? Make it more of an expression of our passion rather than an expression of our anxiety or worry? Let's rise to this challenge with enthusiasm. If you're listening to our podcast, you're probably someone who cares about the earth, who cares about our environment, who cares about making things better, cares about the well-being of other living things and other people around the world. And that means that you have an important role to play in the next few years. I really think this year is the start of something big and important. It's those of us who care, who are willing and able to put the priorities of the greater good at the top of our list, who are going to lead the way toward a better path. Not that you have to experience any kind of pressure or burden from answering this call in your own life, or that there's this sort of elite separate group of people who are the only ones changing the world. Not at all. But if you feel this pull to stories like this, if you're excited by the idea of how we can make things better, which isn't everybody in the world, frankly, and that's not a judgment, it's just true. Not everybody feels inspired to get in with that message and jump on that train. But those of us who do, let's own it and really make it part of who we are. I mean, you're already answering some kind of call by caring in the first place. It means that your heart's connected to the needs of others. Your compassion is alive and active. You see what's going on in the world, to the planet, to living things, to people, and you want things to change. That means that you have a community out there, because there are more and more people who feel that. Nothing is ours to solve alone. We are a growing movement. And I think those of us who see what our world is and what it could be have a responsibility in a way to speak out and act up for that vision, now more than ever. We wouldn't have this vision, this inner pull toward reshaping our world if we weren't capable of being part of writing a new story. I really believe that. We wouldn't have this idea if it was impossible to achieve. And again, if you're here on the planet right now and here with us listening, I think you're part of that story. Today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the United States. Martin Luther King Jr. is and was one of our most inspiring leaders throughout all of history, I would argue. Dr. King had a difficult, uphill, insanely complex challenge in front of him. I'm sure his vision felt impossible even to him and to those close to him many times. There's that famous Nelson Mandela quote, "Everything seems impossible until it is done." We now revere Dr. King for his vision, his tenacity, his intelligence, his poetry and words, how he could reach out and connect to people's hearts and lead the successful movement that he helped to build with many others of his peers in the civil rights movement, and to unite Americans of all colors based on the fight for the rights of Black Americans and the rights of equality that all Americans should enjoy and experience. But there's something that's not often talked about when it comes to Dr. King, and that's how he was actually viewed by the population of the United States while he was alive and fighting this fight. A 1966 poll found that 2/3 of Americans had an unfavorable view of Dr. Martin Luther King. This was 3 years after the now famous 1963 March on Washington, which culminated at the Washington Monument with Dr. King's famous speech, the I Have a Dream speech. Dr. King was a changemaker, a disruptor of the status quo, and there were undoubtedly many people in positions of power who didn't want him to succeed. So lies were spread, he was called an extremist, he was ridiculed. We know he was spied on by the FBI and maybe other organizations. It's not easy to be the one standing up and calling for change. It's not easy to be the ones calling out the truth of our current world and what needs to change if we want to survive as we are, if we want to continue on better than we've been. It may not always be easy or popular to speak up. And the changemakers in the world now who are calling for more respect and reciprocity with the environment, greater protection of human rights and equality, those are the ones who might be seen as pushing for too much change too quickly as we stand up for the rights of the earth, the rights of all living things, the rights of people not to be exploited or oppressed or suppressed in any way. And although the challenges might be great, we can be ready for them. Be ready to stand up and speak out anyway. To take inspiration from those who have disrupted the status quo in the past, like Dr. King, Gandhi, and many others, and know that our vision is worth the challenge and worth the sacrifices that we'll have to make. And we have to maintain our sense of the possibility to achieve our vision, to maintain our sense of hope. I've gotten a lot of inspiration lately from Jane Goodall and her example and what she says. I've been spending time reading quotes of hers lately, skimming through articles, and looking through transcripts of speeches that she's given recently. A quote she just gave, I think in November of 2021, not too long ago, at Arizona State University to students gathered there, really stuck out at me. The quote is, "Hope is not about looking at the world through rose-colored spectacles. We don't just sit at the end of our tunnel and hope that light will come to us. No. We have to climb up and over all the obstacles in our way to get to that little light." There is a big task before us, this task of building a movement on the ground to motivate and inspire fundamental change at every level of our society. But it's getting to a point where it's no longer a luxury of choice. It's no longer we've got time. I think it's becoming less of an option and more of an imperative. If we want to sustain life as it is on planet Earth much longer, to build a sustainable world, which is possible, it is so possible, we have to act now. I don't know about you, but I have this feeling, it's just a gut feeling that we're standing on the precipice, so to speak, more than ever as we go into 2022. It feels like this is a big year of choosing. I think a lot of us feel it. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're thinking this guy's crazy. I don't know what he's talking about. But going into 2022, I really felt this, not heaviness necessarily, but like this, I guess you could call it weight. It was just this like importance to the moment. This like, it's a very pregnant moment. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pushing. There is conflict and confusion, of course, but there's also there's urgency. Maybe that's the best word. I think it's time to decide what world we'll be stepping into due to the choices we make over the next couple years, and really starting this year. What new information will we learn, will we take in, that will challenge our ideas of the world we thought we knew? What truths will we discover, and what will we do about it? Will we get stuck in fear and all the things that fear causes? Will we get stuck in blame of each other, or blame of somebody else, no matter who it is? Will we get stuck in apathy or resignation? Or will we step up and take on an individual commitment, a community commitment, and a collective responsibility to rethink and reshape this world based on values that we agree are better for us at every level of society? I think that's the choice in front of us. Do we continue on the path that we've been on, sort of saying it's all inevitable anyway, there's no real change we can make? Or do we step up, hold this vision, and truly begin to transform our world, finally? Did any of you watch Don't Look Up on Netflix? The timing of that film being released late last year, I think, is not a coincidence. We've got a window open right now to choose to avert a lot of different kinds of crises. We can't exactly predict how it's going to start, where it's going to start, or exactly what it's going to look like in the way that they could in Don't Look Up necessarily, but we know it's coming, just like the characters in Don't Look Up. We're staring our final moments of choice in the face, and it's time to make that choice. It's time to take the opportunity we're being given before it passes us by and start to rethink and rebuild our world now, so that we don't look back in a few years with longing, wishing we had done more, said more, connected more, built new foundations when we had the chance. And to me, this is just being honest. I'm not trying to be doom and gloomy, I promise. But I am trying to paint a clear picture of where I think we are in this moment and the opportunity available to us. Not the closing curtain and, it's not doom, it's not dread. It's just, hey, we have an amazing opportunity right now, and it's going to be hard. It's going to be complex, and it's going to take a lot of commitment and resilience and persistence, but it's worth it. If you ask me, there's nothing more exciting than envisioning a world based on these ideas of sustainability, ecological renewal, and restoring our earth, restoring our soils, restoring our ways of growing food, restoring our communities, renewal on every level, local and global movements toward respect for the rights of people, planet, and all living things. I think it's invigorating if you get pulled into this vision for the renewal and remaking of every system on Earth based on a new set of values of interconnectedness and cooperation. There's so much exciting work to be done. Again, this is what fuels me as we speak to the guests on our show. They're all so amazing, and their vision is so clear, and they have been so brilliant at solving these problems that we all face. There are so many more inspiring and amazing stories to tell. There are already so many incredible individuals and organizations who are transforming the world, building models that we can replicate around the globe. Even if we simply grow the impact of these voices who are already speaking out and acting for the earth and its citizens, if we just grow that impact, we could do so much. So don't lose hope and don't get overwhelmed. The pandemic has shown us just how strong and resilient we can be, so that we can bring that strength to every challenge we have. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of this whole situation. No matter how long it takes, no matter how hard it gets, it's showing us what we're made of. And when we come to the other side of this, whatever that looks like, we will either be weaker or stronger. I think we're going to be stronger. I think we already are. And as we go through this experience globally, we're building relationships with each other. We're building community. We're building new ways of communicating and interacting with the world around us in ways I think that will serve us. The pandemic has become a long game, which is hard, but builds strength. And everything we face in our world right now, frankly, is a long game. Reimagining every aspect of society is a long game. It's complex. It's going to take a lot of cooperation, and we're going to have to start somewhere. So we've got to start with some specific visions that will lead the way for us. But you know what? I believe we have what it takes. And I think facing something on a global scale like this, all of us in the same situation, there's just a lot of conversation going on around the world, and it's connecting all of us in a way that feels hard sometimes and is fraught with conflict at moments. But overall, I think it's strengthening us for all of the tough roads ahead, helping us to see how to cooperate, how to coordinate, to carry out other goals, other ways of overcoming challenges. As Jane Goodall said in her speech, let's allow our hope to carry us up and over tremendous challenges. Let's strengthen our resolve, believe in ourselves, and in our ability to be strong and resilient. Let's be ready for the difficulty ahead as we reimagine a world which might resist that change at first, but let's stay committed to ourselves and each other and the planet and all of its citizens anyway. You're strong. You matter. You have something to contribute, and so does everyone around you. And together, we can do anything. Let that be your story and our story going into 2022. So, how do we get there? How do we start? I think this is going to be a big question for me and for our podcast this year. We know where we want to go, but what's the first step? How do we work together to create that first step? How do we each contribute? I want us to feel like not only is this better world within reach, but that we have a clear sense of what it's going to take, and we understand what we have to bring to the table right now so that we can get going, not wait on permission from anybody or financial or governmental support on any level. Let's get going, those of us who have this vision. First, I think it's important to identify ways of thinking that don't serve us, that we know don't align with this vision. We know that being hopeless or apathetic will not serve our goals and will only keep us from all of the exciting opportunities that we have right now at our fingertips to build a new world from the ground up. It'll cause us to ignore the examples we've already got. But there are other perspectives too that some very influential and powerful people hold. These are people who, because of their influence, shape our perspectives as global citizens. They speak for us a lot, or we hear their ideas very often. And I think we need to be careful which viewpoints we allow to influence us. Discernment is so important right now. I recently came across a quote from the hugely famous and influential theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking, and it stopped me in my tracks. I'll read it for you quickly. Dr. Hawking said, "We have given our planet the disastrous gift of climate change. When we have reached similar crises, there has usually been somewhere else to colonize. But there is no new world, no utopia around the corner. We are running out of space, and the only places to go are other worlds. It's time to explore other solar systems. Spreading out may be the only thing that saves us from ourselves. I am convinced that humans need to leave Earth." This struck me, and please know that I have the utmost respect for Dr. Hawking and his contributions to the world, to the way we see our universe, to science, his brilliant mind, and he passed in 2018, so again, I say this all with deep respect. I'm not a scientist, but my gut tells me something's off here. I was just shocked when I read this, especially from this man who many consider to be a visionary, a pioneer, a gold standard for mathematical and theoretical excellence, an intellectual great of our time. And my main reaction was, how can he and others who agree with him write us off so easily? And my next thought was, how can he write off the Earth so easily? As if our home is disposable. As if we can just go get a new one. As if this beautiful planet so full of life and potential for greater and greater levels of thriving and interconnectedness is not worth the trouble it will take to rethink our world so that we protect the planet from our own short-sighted impulses, our own short-sighted greed and exploitation of the planet. There are 2 points that I really wanted to make in response to this quote in my own mind. First, Dr. Hawking is right. In the past, we have always had somewhere else to conquer. some other society's resources to take, and some other land to occupy. I won't call it uninhabited land, because all land is inhabited on this planet by one kind of living thing or another. It's, in my opinion, a misnomer. There is no uninhabited land. We have to acknowledge and respect all life, plant, animal, and human. But Dr. Hawking is right about the fact that we no longer have anywhere else to colonize. The colonizing days in the form of land grabbing is over. What he doesn't mention is that this tells us something very important. We haven't learned. We're still approaching this problem as though we're colonists, with a colonizer mindset. Well, there's nowhere else to go to take over, to call our own, even if it's somebody else's because it's clean and full of resources. We've got to go find someone else's land to take, some other planet's resources to grab. That's what got us into this mess in the first place. Our values are fundamentally off. That's what led us down this path. The dominant culture for thousands of years, back to the times of the Greeks and the Romans, has been operating under a model of endless growth, massive wealth accumulation, control and dominion over the earth, and frankly over people, over other species, and exploitation of all of the above. The colonist mindset is what has to end, not our relationship to the earth, if you ask me. We have to stop this endless progress mindset, this always getting bigger, always moving forward, always making more, and start moving inward. Get our feet planted in the earth where we are right now, and retool how we approach our global systems so that they move with long-term benefit. It's progress in the sense of it's building more sustainability. It's progress in the sense of we're coming up with better ideas that serve us, that serve life on planet Earth. So first, Dr. Hawking is right. We can no longer colonize. And second, I believe Dr. Hawking and those who agree with him are wrong. With this perspective, it sounds as though our only two options are to escape the Earth or go extinct. And I believe we have a third option, to evolve. We can escape, go extinct, or evolve. Evolve in our understanding of our relationship to the earth itself and what reciprocity needs to be to maintain it. Evolve in our understanding of the relationship we have to all living things on this planet, how we give and take, and the role that each living thing plays to create this incredible planet where we enjoy such abundant life. Evolve in our understanding of how to live on Earth. Take inspiration from indigenous cultures who have or had sustainability built into their way of life, their way of living, their way of interacting with each other, with nature, with their economic systems and political systems. Evolve in the sense of rethinking our systems to be self-sustaining or community-sustaining in the same way that nature does. Through its own innate intelligence, nature gives every member of the community of life on Earth what it needs. Why can't we mimic that and model that and find ways to build that into our systems? Evolve in our understanding about how to interact with our communities so that every member of society is valued, supported, seen, heard, and is given the opportunity to make a contribution to the whole. And evolve our understanding of ourselves and what it means to be alive on planet Earth. Rediscover meaning and purpose for ourselves so that we move away from this materially driven and progress-obsessed, wealth-obsessed, status-obsessed culture towards something that better resembles what our core knows is right and true for us. Rediscover the real beyond the virtual, the actual connection versus the perceived connection. That voice within us that knows that how we are living right now is not how things have to be. The voice that knows better. If we listen to that voice as individuals and within communities and then collectively on a global scale, I know that we can evolve past this time of these growing pains of chaos and dysfunction. But we've got to believe that we can, and we've got to be careful about the voices we allow to inform our approach. In this speech, Dr. Hawking went on to describe a program that he has worked on with the Russian billionaire Yuri Milner called Breakthrough Starshot. This was a few years ago, obviously. This involves sending a fleet of laser-powered nano spacecraft into space to image planets and other star systems, and then to send that data back to Earth to aid in the discovery of another habitable planet that, we can, the assumption is, escape to and colonize. Call me crazy, but does anybody find it a little strange that we are talking about reaching another star system instead of cleaning up our own planet? What is it about billionaires that causes them to look at the stars and want to build a bridge to other worlds, but to ignore what's right at their own feet? Imagine if you were a billionaire and you had the opportunity to fund transformative projects on every kind of scale around the world. Would you rather have your legacy be, I got humanity to Mars before Earth fell apart? Or, my great-grandchildren are smelling the same flowers as I did when I was a child, because I helped to transform and renew our home, the Earth, to prevent ecological disaster for generations to come. This is the question of the two paths before us, continuing on as we have been toward technological prowess and accomplishment and human marvels, or toward respect and renewal of the planet and each other. And what we do with our resources and our ability to imagine and to create will be determined by which path we choose, individually, on a community level, and collectively. I can only speak for myself, but I would much rather keep the Brazilian rainforest than escape to Alpha Centauri. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with innovation and striving to accomplish more than we have. I think it's just a matter of understanding the benefits of what kind of innovation, what kind of progress. What does it truly bring us to be able to go to Mars when we're so concerned about protecting life at our own feet? Barbara Marx Hubbard, an author, speaker, and past vice presidential candidate, who has also passed, wrote an incredible book that has inspired me so much called Conscious Evolution. In her book, she argues that humans have an opportunity right now to evolve, not due to cycles and processes in nature in the way that we usually think about evolution, but to evolve by choice, conscious evolution. This is the choice in front of us. I agree with her. To me, either escaping the Earth or going extinct is not really a choice for most people when we have billions and billions of human beings on the planet and billions of animals and plants. Only a small portion of the living things on this planet will have access to spacecraft that will carry them to Mars or elsewhere. I think we need to have a little bit of a reality check with this idea that we can save the human race at large with that as a solution. It's barely a solution, if you ask me. Again, if you watch Don't Look Up to the end, you know how that is likely to turn out. Not the very end, but the fact that a very small handful of people got off the planet. So the real choice and opportunity before us on a global level is one of self-initiated evolution, or not. Or we continue on this path toward a lot of ecological struggle. In her book, Hubbard describes her belief that crises and what feel like disasters, and what sometimes are disasters, are problems that serve as drivers of evolution, drivers of change. In other words, we could not overcome this colonizer mindset that we've had over the last several thousand years without the true problems we have now, which force us to evolve beyond that mindset, into a new mindset, a mindset that actually sustains us. Hubbard calls us Generation 1, the first generation in human history to face evolution or extinction together as a species, collectively, with awareness of it. Hubbard doesn't give us an out of escape in her book, because she believes evolution is inevitable. It's just a matter of how chaotic our world will get before we do evolve past our current ways of thinking and behaving. Hubbard also describes in great detail in her book what evolution could look like for the individual, for communities, for the planet, and the forms that that evolution could take across all elements of society, including business, media, social structures, economics, education, the arts, spirituality, and more. I mean, I'd love to spend hours highlighting all of the brilliant ideas in that book and the potentials that she outlines, but I'd really just recommend that you read the book and let it inspire you too, and see what it calls up in your mind as far as what's possible and what you can bring to the table. Again, that's Conscious Evolution by Barbara Marx Hubbard. The possibilities are intoxicating, in my opinion, when you read a book like Conscious Evolution. And what I love is I think some of these solutions, some of the things that she conceived decades ago as being possible, are starting to take shape. Some of these nonprofits and businesses which are creating a new model and a new path, there's already been some maturity there. Again, that's who we invite on our show. And with momentum and growth behind those kinds of organizations and those kinds of ideas, we can evolve together into a different way of inhabiting the world. Again, not evolving physically, but evolving our ideas of what our world can be and what our role can be in it. Evolve our understanding of how to live on planet Earth. There's one idea in Hubbard's book that I really quickly want to call out because I think it's so important. Hubbard writes about how she sees our global media and news outlets as the nervous system of our planet, the way information travels, and how we connect different parts of the world throughout the human race. It's, I think, a really compelling and super accurate image. We can have a healthy nervous system, which passes ideas of well-being, expansiveness, possibility, and opportunity through it, informing the renewal and inventiveness that we can get behind, and inspiring us with examples of what's possible, what's being done in other parts of the planet. Or we can be content with a nervous system that's full of toxins, toxic ideas of violence, limitation, and victimhood, ideas which make us feel small or fearful or powerless. Just as we choose what we consume in our daily diets, the food we eat, which impact our physical health, we choose what we consume in our daily mental diet too, which are fed by ideas and this global media nervous system. The question then becomes, will we have a healthy mind full of purpose and potential, belief in our ability, or a distracted, malnourished mind fed by fear and divisiveness? That's our choice. I often find that a lot of what is told to us is messages of inevitability, of destruction. These ideas that we're flawed innately and that we'll never overcome our vices or our short-sightedness and become something better, build a better world. But I really can never agree with that. Every great movement felt hopeless when it was started. Every visionary group of people or every visionary individual started when things seemed impossible. Every movement feels small and insignificant when it begins, and then there's a larger and larger group with time and momentum. Gandhi did not free India from British rule overnight. He developed methods of thought and civil disobedience and legal approaches and community organization tactics over several years in South Africa, which was the first chapter in his development of his ideas. He worked against the racist policies of the South African government way before he began his work in India. The movement then was very small, and it grew and grew throughout South Africa, and then he went to India. Let's build this movement protecting the rights of the earth, of all life on earth, and of humanity across the globe, knowing that we can achieve our goals. Just as major movements for civil rights, equality, and justice of many kinds have done already in the last 200 years. We actually have a lot of examples. This is our first opportunity to demonstrate what a global movement, fueled by global citizens, centered on a core set of values, can accomplish. Never have we had this opportunity in our known history to connect with and collaborate with like-minded individuals in every corner of the planet. Just as Martin Luther King Jr. inspired over 250,000 people of many colors to join him and his peers in the civil rights movement for the March on Washington, for jobs and freedom in 1963, we can inspire marches for the preservation of life on Earth in cities across the globe. Marches for the rights of the earth and all its inhabitants. Marches for a sustainable world. But let's not get too overwhelmed by the global picture, which I think is a big pitfall. We also have to build strong communities locally, to show ourselves what we're capable of on a smaller scale, where we can get our hands dirty and actually make an impact that's physical, material, and really real, which allows us then to build successful models and local movements that can be replicated through collaboration and communication around the world through this amazing tool of the internet. Jane Goodall says it this way: "We are repeatedly told to think globally and act locally, but it should be the other way around. If you think globally first, you'll get depressed. But if you think about what you can do locally, if you take action with friends and find that you're making a difference, that'll give you more hope and make you take more action." I really agree with Jane's simple and clear and true statement here. Focus on what you can do now, today, where you are. Don't take on the problems of the world. Understand that your power is very often local and small scale as far as the action you can take to make improvements right now. And then we can build pockets of local communities who have similar values to exchange ideas and come together for larger scale actions, to communicate our ideas to each other and our values to the entire world. We have the opportunity to come together as one voice, represented by billions of diverse individual voices and diverse individual communities, to say, enough. We will not allow the destruction of our ecosystems any longer. We will not purchase products made as a result of exploitation of the earth or other living things. We will not buy your cheap energy made from cutting up the planet and destroying its resources. We will not accept the narrative that we must depend on large corporations for the most efficient or most cost-effective or most abundant forms of food production and materials production. We'll come up with other options, and we will grow them. It's time to open our eyes to this moment and to make our choice. The time is now. Hey everyone. So if you're enjoying this episode, we would appreciate it so much if you'd share with your circle, if you'd give us a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening on, and just help us to spread the word about what we're creating, the stories we're telling, and the messages we're putting out there. Send to a friend, family member, colleague who you know would be excited by these ideas. Give us a share on your social media accounts. Start conversations based on inspiration you've gotten from our show, and talk about where it came from. Thanks so much. So this year, you'll hear us exploring this idea a lot, this idea of how do we get started? We've spoken a bit about what maybe to avoid, some of the pitfalls, some of the challenges. I think the next big question becomes, well, what do we do then? We know what not to do, what not to think. What do we do and think? I think about this a lot. And just before we wrap up here in a couple minutes, I think it's helpful to start talking about agreeing on some core fundamental principles that can guide our next steps. I think the best inspiration for these principles comes from a lot of different sources and voices, but some of the best are those of indigenous and ancient cultures, because a lot of them knew how to live, to sustain life. They didn't overtake their resources in the way that we have. I've been reading a really amazing book called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. She is a plant ecologist, botanist, professor, and also a member of a native indigenous community in North America. I've spoken about her in a couple other recent episodes. She writes a lot about the indigenous values which shaped sustainable societies for hundreds of years before colonization. I think it would be such a great exercise to make a list of values. And you know what? We weren't going to have a challenge today, which is something we normally do on every episode, but we're going to. Here's my challenge for every one of you. Take some time, if you've got it, or just make the time. I think this is a worthy exercise to come up with your version of these values. What could these values be that shape a better world, that shape sustainability at every level of culture, that shape a renewal of the systems in place to support and grow human rights and human equality? Make your own list and then share it. Share it with us. Send it to us, podcast@wecanremaketheworld.com by email, or find us on social media and send it to us there. Send it to friends to start conversations, or family members or people who you know are like-minded with you who would engage with you on this topic. I know what my list is. I've actually made it here and I was going to read it, but I've decided now that I'd rather hear yours. What a cool exercise it would be to unite a lot of different like-minded organizations around the world and compare our lists and then make one that we all agree on. Oh, that would be really, really awesome. I hope we get the chance to do that. I think if we begin with our values, with our foundational understanding of the world that we wish to inhabit, then we set ourselves up for so much more success. There's a reason that the U.S. Constitution is talked about so frequently. It is this bedrock document which defines the values and ideas of a way of governing and being governed that was a new concept in many ways. A thoughtful and still evolving document that's of course not perfect. There's a reason there are amendments to protect the rights of women, the rights of non-white people, and others. But it changed democracy forever because of its power, because of the values that were stated in it. I think once we have these values for the world that we want to build, the rest becomes easier. If we're meeting all of our criteria that we've laid out in our core foundational principles document or whatever, we will easily leave out the elements of our current society which don't line up with this new world we're building. It's not enough to point our fingers at everything around us and call it bad, call it wrong or short-sighted or unsustainable. We have to go past that step of acknowledging what's wrong, past that step of accusation and sort of naming the problem, and then bring a vision for what's beyond our current world into focus. That's what's going to get us there. I see a world in which we breathe a collective sigh of relief as we step out of humankind as conqueror and colonist of the earth, and into humankind as steward and partner of the earth. A world in which we have learned to listen to the inner voice that's telling us to halt the needless self-destruction we seem to think is inevitable, but isn't. That same voice which is telling us now, we can do better than this. That voice is the voice that will guide us out of extinct or escape and toward evolve instead. Will we listen? Will we act? Will we come together across hundreds of nations and millions of communities to establish values for a new earth? That's the choice before us in 2022. And I don't know that we'll be given this choice for much longer. We have evidence of the urgency of this choice, and we have data which shows us the impact we're having on people and planet. We know who the culprits are. We know what's holding us back. And we know how we each are complicit in the current system, and how to remove ourselves from it. We've been given the gift of the knowledge and awareness and tools to recognize where we are and where we could go if we choose to. So now, it's time to make the choice, to identify and contribute whatever each of us has to give, to lend our voice, our resources, our ideas, and to make a daily commitment to accept nothing less than a reimagining and remaking of every aspect of our world based on a new but timeless set of values, which place human creativity and a respect for and preservation of all life as priorities number 1 and 2. Okay, I talked a lot at you, but I wanted to kick this year off with a vision. I wanted to go there. Something to sum up what I think is an incredibly important moment, an incredibly important opportunity. It's time to get started. It's time to have these conversations every day. And it's time to amplify voices that are leading the way for us, supporting businesses, nonprofits, and individuals who are showing us a better path and making that better path possible. In other words, keep doing what I know all of you are doing. Keep asking yourself how you can be part of the solution, and then follow through by taking action based on what you come up with. Never believe that we're doomed. We're not. Never believe that the powers that want to keep the world on its current path are bigger or more powerful than the power of ordinary citizens who come together around a set of ideas that they deeply believe in. Grassroots movements have changed the world time and time again, and every time, huge power structures stood against them and fell apart or were changed. We have nothing to fear if we truly believe in ourselves and each other. And on top of all that, do your best to have some fun in daily life. Unplug, forget about all this for a little while each day. Hug your families, play a game or paint a picture. Keep balance with yourself so you don't feel weighed down. The weight of the world should not be on any of our shoulders. And of course, take care of yourself, take care of your health as we continue to find our way through the circumstances of our time. Stay well, stay focused on the vision alive within you, and stay with us throughout 2022 here on our show. We are speaking with some truly amazing and accomplished people, some of my heroes. Even in the next few episodes, we have some amazing people that I've only dreamed of speaking, who are changing our world every day, and I can't wait to share their message and ideas with you. We can't wait to continue bringing these stories to you throughout the year ahead, and interacting with and learning from you. Thanks for being here. Thanks, as always, for joining us. We'll see you in 2 weeks for our first guest episode of 2022. Until then.